I recently posted up a video here on my YouTube channel using the new Sony a6400 for shooting real estate style of videos. I also wanted to test this camera for shooting vlog, travel or general run and gun style of videos, and here are my thoughts. Hi, I'm Grant, and run and gun style of video shooting for travel videos or adventure or vlog style of videos is actually kind of an area that I really quite enjoy doing. So I was obviously pretty keen to give the Sony a6400 a bit of a try out. So the important things for me for a camera for example, adventure shooting or vlog style shooting are things such as size or portability of the camera, and this Sony a6400 is a mid-sized. It's compact, but it's not small or compact like my Sony RX100, for example. And obviously other important features I look for are, of course, image quality, usability, and features for shooting video. Size-wise, it's compact, but it's not small, as I just mentioned, such as my Sony RX100. And this is important for me if I'm shooting travel or adventure or vlog style videos, because I find personally I like to have the camera on me. So the more smaller and portable the camera is, the more I will have it on me and the more I'll use it. So it's a big deal for me. For example, my Sony RX100, I can put it in a little camera bag and I can attach it to my belt or to my backpack, and it's there when I need it. And I generally find that the bigger the camera and the more expensive the camera package, the less I tend to have it with me. And obviously I'm a little bit more careful with it. So it's kind of it works against it having a big expensive camera, unfortunately for me personally, because I'm a little bit more careful with it. So I don't have it with me in situations where it might be going to get banged and knocked around. So size is important. Image quality. I predominantly still shoot in 1080p because that suits my workflow the best. And now the 1080p out of this camera is okay. It's nothing particularly special. But what I did, or was quite pleasantly surprised with, was the 4K 60 megabits a second option on this camera. The 4K image out of this camera actually looks really nice, as you can see in these pictures here. And what I was pleasantly surprised with is that when running it in 4K at 60 megabits a second, it's still quite reasonable or quite economical sized or file sizes, which is another big deal for me. So yeah, the 4K at 60 megabits, that was a sweet spot for me on this camera. I was shooting in Sony's Picture Profile 3, and these shots are pretty much straight out of camera, and I was running that camera in the full auto mode, and I actually think they look really nice. Features. Sony pack a lot of video shooting features into their cameras these days, and this camera can shoot up to 4K at 30 frames a second as its highest frame rate in 4K. It has the flip up LCD monitor as opposed to the flip out. It's okay, it's not great, but at least it enables you to get that selfie or vlog style mode when shooting, which is important. It has both zebras and peaking, which helps you setting exposure and focus when shooting video. It has 10, not 1, not 2, not 3, but 10 picture profiles, including Sony's S-Log2 and S-Log3. And my favorite was the PP3 mode for essentially shooting straight out of camera and having to do virtually no grading at all to the pictures. It has a mic in jack, which is important if you intend on using this camera as a vlog style camera for attaching an external microphone. However, it does bring up one design or much publicized design flaw, is that when you attach a external microphone to the camera, it actually blocks the viewfinder, so you can't see yourself when shooting in the selfie mode. It does high frame rate up to 120 frames a second in 1080p for shooting slow-mo. I thought the quality was pretty good. It wasn't fantastic and it wasn't overly sharp, but it was pretty good. Maybe I was just comparing it a little bit too harshly against its 4K when comparing the 1080 slow-mo to the 4K footage, obviously. It also has Sony's SMQ menu option, which stands for slow and quick, which means you can change its frame rate recording from the high frame rate, 120 frames a second, right down to 1 frame a second, which you can then use for shooting time-lapse style of videos. I had a wee go at this, but I didn't test it comprehensively. As I mentioned in my previous video on this channel, on this camera, the camera sits quite nicely in the hand. It is quite well balanced, and you have good access to the controls for changing your exposure settings, such as your aperture and your shutter speed. I say good, all except for this teeny weeny movie record button. Unless you have pixie or fairy size fingers, you're going to struggle with that one. but fortunately Sony allows you to program the front shutter release button so you can use that to start and stop movie recording. Sony advertises that they have a new autofocus system built into this a6400, and you can change the parameters, and to be honest, I left it just in the default mode and it actually works really well. It is really quick and it makes the autofocus on my other cameras such as my Sony RX100, my GH5, even my Canon 80D here. I have to say that the autofocus works extremely fast and extremely well on this camera. Battery life, I've been doing a bit of reading on the internet and some people have been giving this camera a bit of a hard time for short battery life, but I actually found I had no problem with it. For example, on the weekend, I wasn't shooting all day, but I essentially in fact, I didn't even use one battery for that whole weekend of shooting. So to me, actually, it was fine. There are many good video shooting features in this camera. However, I want to address the elephant in the room here, and that is the lack of in-body stabilization in the Sony a6400. Sony are targeting vloggers for this camera with their marketing when selling or launching this camera. So that by its very nature is a handheld style of shooting, so image stabilization is really important. Now it has steady shot, Sony steady shot, and I'm using and I've tried the camera with both the Sony OSS lenses being the 10 to 18 and this 16 to 70 lenses which have their optical steady shot. However, no in-body stabilization actually is quite a how do I put this politely? It's a bit of a flaw with this camera because using its built-in image stabilization, even with its lenses, as you can see in these pictures, it is not great. We're spoilt for choice these days with image stabilization, such as the image stabilization in my Panasonic GH5, and even my wee Sony RX100 has better image stabilization than this camera. I guess Sony is perhaps trying to differentiate its bigger brother, the Sony a6500, which does have the built-in image stabilization. However, if Sony is marketing this camera as a vlog style camera, and vlog styling, as I said, is a handheld, by nature very much a handheld shooting discipline, I am not sure why they didn't include the in-body image stabilization. Sony New Zealand also very kindly sent me the Sony Zeiss 16 to 70 f4 constant aperture lens, because obviously I want to try the run and gun style of shooting with this video, and this is a very nice lens. With the Sony a6400's 1.534 crop factor, this lens effectively has a zoom range of 24 to 107 millimeters in full frame turns. That is a great zoom range for essentially run and gun style of shooting, and that is the lens that I used in some of these earlier pictures I showed you from my weekend away at the coast. I actually really like this lens. It's nicely built, and obviously with that very versatile zoom range and the constant f4 aperture, which is great because when shooting video, if you're in f4, you can basically recompose your shot by changing your frame size, and you still are at f4 as opposed to non-constant aperture lenses. This lens also gave me some surprisingly good bokeh when shooting at f4. If I could only pick one lens to use with this camera, then that would be my choice, the Sony 16 to 70 f4. To sum up my thoughts on using the Sony a6400 as a vlog or general adventure and travel style of camera for shooting video, I think it is actually a really good little package. It's not compact, but it is still compact in a mid-size, mid-priced offering. And most importantly, the image quality, especially the 4K 60 megabits a second, looks fantastic out of this camera. But as I alluded to earlier, the lack of in-body image stabilization and the kind of odd way that the LCD monitor flips up is a bit of a deal breaker to me, especially the image stabilization. However, if you could live and work around these flaws with this camera, and perhaps if Sony came out with a Sony a6400 Mark II, which does have in-body image stabilization and perhaps a viewfinder that flips out to the side, then I would recommend and buy it in a heartbeat. My wish list for this camera, if the Sony engineers were perhaps to sit down with me and listen to my humble opinion, would be obviously include in-body image stabilization, have the LCD monitor flip out to the side, and also I'd love to see some built-in ND on this style of camera. And then that would be one perfect camera, I'm sure. But as we all know, there is no one perfect camera for all situations and shooters. I guess if you don't have lots of models and variations to sell, then these companies would go out of business. Thanks for watching the video, and I will see you in the next one. banged and knocked around. So size is important, as the ladies will tell you.